Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Brenda and Sandy's Friday morning chats. We missed last week. Some things had come up. It was a pretty busy week with Family Day, and we're back today. And what we want to share with everybody today is the emotion of anger. And sometimes anger gets a bad rap, and we want to just explore it from different perspectives, because we are going to go through a time period that anger is going to come up, and how we handle it is as important as anything. So it doesn't mean that we deny ourselves the anger. So how are you doing today, Brenda?
Very well, Sandy. Thank you. And you?
I'm doing fantastic. Even though it's been a crazy week and all kinds of things are happening here in Canada. What's the date today? February 25th, 2022. There's still a lot to be optimistic about. And we're still working our way through a process of watching the insanity unfold around us, trying to stay centered as we go through and stay in the observer position, while also expressing ourselves emotionally, because that's how we go into the higher states of consciousness, right? So did you want to start talking about anger, or how we got talking about this? Just, we're discussing what topic to talk about, and we were talking a little earlier, and as we talked about anger, boundaries came up, all kinds of things. So nothing is isolated. So did you want to start to say anything about anger and start?
Well, actually, I do. And because of what you just said, it hit me. We have to recognize that these are the stages of grief. These really are. Anger is a part of the stages of grief, and emotionally and as a global experience, we are grieving. And there's an enormous amount to that we really must acknowledge. And so, yeah, anger is going to come up. And just as you said, it's how we express it and how we cope with it as well, right? Like, we have to get it out, but we also have to learn to process that in ourselves. So it's a very important topic, anger. And it does relate to boundaries. It relates to grief. It relates to a lot of different things. And it relates to a self-defense mechanism, right? That we have to have in place. And I think that's what we're seeing, rising up in
Globally.
People right now.
Yes. And it's interesting because a lot of people, we've been taught to the service to other thing, but a lot of people have underestimated themselves or did not protect themselves enough. And they're getting angry. Sometimes anger is a good thing. And I'm just going to share this, the one screen here. So this is a cone of consciousness. And when you look at this cone, you look on the left-hand side, it starts from 0 basically up to 1,000. And there are different states of consciousness that are given a vibration. So I want to look at anger from a neutral position first and just look at where it sits energetically. And Gary Young from Young Living Oils, he also measured frequency of different things, and he measured the human frequency, the body. He says the human body registers between 62 and 78 hertz as a normal body. That's the frequency range. He said colds start at 58, flu start at 57, cancer's at 42, and physical death registers at 25. So as you can see, shame and guilt, when somebody tries to put you into shame or guilt, basically they're putting you into the vibrational level of death. So when I look up here at anger at 150, I've worked with people who've come to see me who felt shame because they had anger issues, because they didn't know how to express themselves energetically and set the boundaries. And I would say, just because, so what, you have anger issues, maybe it saved your life someday. It brought your frequency up when everybody was pushing you down. So I don't want to look at anger as good or bad. It's just an expression of who we are. It's just one of the ways we express ourselves. We're not allowed to do drive-bys on people. But sometimes we do need to set boundaries, and anger is the one step that gets us to the point that you're going to take a step and defend yourself. And we shouldn't always have to be in a defensive position. There's nothing in any, I figured this out a couple of days ago. There's nothing in any police literature, mental health literature, military literature that says stop fucking people, stop hurting people. It's always about defend yourself, defend yourself, defend yourself. So there's no balance when it comes to abuse in our society. So this is why sometimes people are angry. And you were saying that earlier, Brenda, that we're going to see a lot of anger coming up in people.
Yeah, and it's justified. That's the other factor you have to actually look at. And I mean, really, who determines justification, really, when you think about it, right? What determines justification? But I have to say that, when it comes down to defending oneself, against attack, when you said that it's about defend, 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 well, that's actually a flag right there to tell you that there's always somebody trying to attack you.
Totally.
You need to be aware of it. They're letting you know subliminally there, then it serves you to be aware. not on guard in a way that is constantly ready to attack back or offensively, but definitely in an awareness space that's prepared. You know, again, like defensive driving, right? Like you're not out there on the attack, but
Yes.
could happen.
You're not hyper defensive either. Right. So why, when we're talking about anger, what had come up for me last week, some people were down in Ottawa. I was down there a couple of weeks ago, and some people had come home, and I've been hearing different people. They figured they got attacked by direct energy weapons. How's that for Deirdre Poole? They say it happened in Canterbury in Australia and here in Ottawa. And these people felt absolutely achy. One felt razor blades in their throat. Another one felt razor blades in their chest. Some had sinus headaches. Some of them, their whole body, just the bones ached. So when I'm talking to people who are going through a lot of this, but the one thing they all had in common was anger. One turned it inward on herself. She was so mad at the people around her who aren't standing up, but she didn't want to say anything. She turned it inward. Well, then that magnifies when you feel sick, when you're agitated and anger, that just causes illness in your body. And what I'm not saying this is what happened with any of these people. We didn't go into it this far, but I know from past experience, people I've worked with, that when you're angry, you clench energetically. So think of clenching your root chakra. Shouldn't say this because I can think of a person who did tell me this. So what happens, they have trouble eliminating going bowel movements because now your root chakra is clenched. That doesn't allow your body to detox. I've seen other people who their heart palpitations, because they were so mad, their heart was starting to flare up a little bit. And that's not good for your heart either, to get it racing out of its natural rhythm. And I worked with about 3-4 people told me they had sinus issues. So I look at these 3 spots and I say, okay, so the root chakra, it could be your like just above your intestines, depending where your colon is. You look at your heart chakra, and then you're looking at your intuition. So you're looking at your knowing, you're looking at your instincts, and you're looking at your intuition, and basically you're squeezing those things in. And the one who was having a lot of sinus issues, she didn't give herself permission to feel anger. That was the emotion we cleared. And she goes, my sinuses feel better already. Because she was holding it in her intuition, in her head. And you think of where your third eye is, that's all connected, I think, to sinus cavities. So this can hurt us physically. It can manifest in the physical realm if we don't process these things. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to do a drive-by on somebody, but it's definitely okay to be angry. But use your anger to serve you. You need to set a boundary with somebody. So I thought it was just interesting. So we can collectively project our psyche to Ottawa for all these people who thought it was okay to use direct energy weapons on your own people. These people need to go. There's no excuse why we live in such an abusive society in Canada that we tolerate these people in charge who get to think they can do whatever they want. And they don't. So lots of good things to talk about anger. I had some people call me this week, and a lot of them are talking about what's happened to their children in the Children's Aid Society, that their children were taken. And we know they're all tied to human trafficking. And one called me, and she had a background in mental health and was talking and saying, I can see a lot of what you're saying. You know, I think there's a lot of things wrong with our industry. And it was interesting because I probably had 5 conversations that day, and I would talk half an hour, 20 minutes, an hour, more than that. And people are telling me horrific things about their children being taken, or how they were hurt in the foster care system. She was the only one. After 20 minutes, I started vibrating. Like, I mean, I'm just like, because she kept referring to her manuals in the mental health. Well, this is what we learned. This is how we do this. No, it's all bullshit. So it didn't matter if she was talking about addiction. She told me that a lot of the mental health people are getting their coaching certificates, and they have the mental health certificate to fall back on, because if you're counseling somebody, you're basically practicing without a license and you can go to jail. And I'm like, your industry is run by psychopaths and pedophiles. We're all trying to decriminalize pedophilia. The problem is you're going along with it, and they set up your training manual. It took quite a few times me having to set that boundary with her. So she calls me, wants my opinion, and keeps telling me her bullshit that she learned as if that's gospel. No. Don't give your power away to anybody. But even though I was vibrating, I was getting agitated. I'm observing myself get agitated, but I didn't go into anger. But we're going to have a whole problem of these people down the road who think if you've got anger issues that they get to diagnose you if you're acting out because you're tired of being screwed by your government. So there's just a lot of moving parts to this. And so the anger, who's more qualified to diagnose anybody that you've got anger issues? No one. Work with somebody you trust, right? So if you've got it and you want to get rid of it, get rid of it, right? If you've got it and you're hurting other people, stop it. You're an abuser.
Yeah.
If you say, oh, I had bad things happen to me now, and you're still abusing people now because of what happened to you in your past, it's either wrong then, or it's wrong now. Pick one. You don't get both. So we really have to learn how to process our emotions. I don't want to say quickly, because everybody's at a different, how do you word that? Everybody's at a different stage of feeling. So you want to feel the anger so that you can release it. You don't want to just do a spiritual bypass or emotional bypass and just pretend you're not angry, because that's going to manifest in your body. And then down the road, so a lot of things we've been working on lately is, people taking other people's crap, and they're trying to defend themselves with all kinds of people around them. And it's like, you don't owe any of those people an explanation. If they've got a problem with you, that's their problem, unless you've done something to harm them, because they need to judge you. And these people are starting to vibrate and they're getting angry, because it seems like the crazier things get, the more control people are trying to get over others. Maybe they're not yours to control. I don't know. So it's been an interesting, fun week, just observing without attachment, right? I've had people yell at me this week that it's out of character. And I'm like, what? But I know it's out of character, but they also got hit with those weapons.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes.
So no judgment, just observation, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's so many different energies floating around that, you could, it's like walking through a restaurant alley, and you have all these different smells of different foods and cuisines and whatnot, and you never know what you're going to get. So you've got to constantly be, in a place of awareness, but also in a place of what I call buffered sacredness. That's that bubbled space of your own, where you're allowed to have your own energy and not be affected by others. And if we don't distinctively put that in place for ourselves every single day, we are subjected to the smells, the influences, and whatever else of other people. And that's when we can feel ourselves under attack, or subjected to other people's anger issues or emotional outbursts. And there's plenty of them out there right now. Like, it's crazy.
And even manipulations. Manipulations are coming in now as people are trying to jockey for position. It's like, we're not in competition. What are you jockeying for? So we have to, yeah, I agree with what you're saying on the anger, right?
So it's a very it's a very important topic for us to discuss, because there is time where anger is necessary, and it's almost, well, it's not just valid, but it's necessary. I should say it's almost necessary in some cases, because you need to get up and get active in some ways, right? Like, you can't be complacent. That's the difference right there, where complacency and complicit and all of those things come in without that activation of anger that gets you riled up enough to get off the damn couch. Like, come on, people.
I know.
It's really important to discuss.
But it is interesting how sometimes when people feel anger, we all feel a little differently. Or like I was saying, if there's shame attached to your anger, why? Who told you you don't have the right to stand up for yourself?
Yeah.
Like, I was going to tell a story, but I'm not going to.
Oh, yep. And then who told you that standing up for yourself doesn't go with being angry? Like, where does that come in? Like, and who told you how to respond to your emotions anyway?
So there is a group of people, though, that say anger's bad. And then that just makes that person vibrate even more. And then they turn that anger inward. Yeah.
And all of these, other emotions compile, because now you're festering that thought that somebody else's opinion, really is all it is someone else's opinion. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We are so freedom everywhere, don't we? Freedom within, freedom without. I mean, everywhere.
We should have it, but we don't, because we live in a very codependent society that insists on controlling everybody else's thoughts or what they believe is right or wrong. And we're all, I consider myself to be one of the least codependent people I know. I respect everybody has a choice, providing it's not harming somebody else. You can choose. If you want to do something, that's your business. If you want help with something, you have to ask. But this is what's part of what's going wrong, right? Everybody's telling everybody, you got to do this rule. Let's follow this rule. Follow this rule.
I think that that's a very integral part, because do what you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. That's kind of you know, like a, well, in a lot of areas it's like a reedy, right? It's like a just this one thing you hold on to, this one maybe a moral, I guess, in a sense. But that has to be also you know, differentiated with the fact that it's in your conscious awareness. Like if you're hurting somebody, if you're doing something and you know somebody's being affected by it, but you continue to do it anyway, that's, you
You're
know
a
what I mean?
psychopath.
You're intentionally hurting that person, but knowing your actions are in fact affecting them, that's where consciousness and conscientious comes in, right? Like, you know, absolute, because, but if you don't know that you're hurting somebody, then it's not on you. It's not.
It is on you if you have a fiduciary obligation, or you have a responsibility to the people that you're serving to know what you're talking about. And this is what, so this is, I always come back to the transgenderism, the, you know, all the 6 genders. You're encouraging a child from age 3 up that they can cut their genitals off. You're hurting somebody. Like, where in your own realm of conscience do you think that that is not causing harm to another human being? And then sometimes you can come back to, well, let's do it to you and see if you like it. Can you imagine anybody in the mental health industry telling other people, go get your genitals cut off? We said, ladies, we're going to slice your girls off. Let's see if you handle it, how you handle it. Then you can have a lived experience. Some people aren't even conscious enough that they can see that their behavior harms another. And those are programs that they're running. Could be an occupational program, religious program, whatever it is, right? So if you've got a rote answer and you can't break down, you can't analyze something and break it down to see if it is causing harm or not, then you probably shouldn't be in a role where you're working with people, right? So this therapist is saying, oh, if you go from coaching to counseling, you could be charged for that. What asshole put mental health in charge? Oh, they did. You know what I mean? So this is really a lot. There's a lot to unpack, looking at all of the different moving parts with the emotions that we're going to go through. Can you remember the 5 stages of grief? I know there's denial,
anger, resentment, sorrow, and something else.
Isn't that interesting? Because when you look at denial, how many people are keeping their eyes closed right now? They're in denial, right? So there's a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts happening right now. And it's okay to be angry one minute and process it the next. Ask yourself, why are you angry? Is this anger mine or somebody else's? Am I angry because of something somebody's doing or restricting from me or for somebody else? Is it my problem? Because sometimes we jump in and want to help people. So people will tell me I'm a hypocrite because I want to stop human trafficking. Those little ones can't stand up for themselves. And I've talked to enough adults that work in the industry, regardless of whether they work in mental health, police, education, and they all blow me off politics. They've been given a chance to do the right thing. They've proven that they intentionally are doing the wrong thing. They no longer have the right to tell people what to do, is where I'm at with that. So that's why I'm jumping in. I've given them the opportunity to do the right thing repeatedly, and they cannot do that. They will not do that. So now we go on without them. So now this is where humans regroup, I think, and we start setting up some standards for ourselves and bypass some of this system, right?
And you know what? Go outside the system. The system is totally broken. There's no, I don't think there's any system, and I'm going to speak just basically for Canadians, but here in our country anyway, that actually works well.
No, they work for the abuser. So this is so interesting what we were talking about, boundaries. I'm not making any judgments against anybody. I'm just observing how we all got to be in this mess we're in. And I think his name was Danny Bulford. He was the RCMP officer who wouldn't take the jab. He worked for Trudeau. So he was standing up and doing security for the convoy. Well, at one point he's making a video and he's talking to the people, and he said, there's a group of people about to come in. and they're going to start causing problems for the truckers, and they're going to start picking fights, and they're going to be violent. He goes, when you encounter these people, back out, just back away from them and take video of them if you can and call the police. And I'm like, what kind of advice is that? Where is the cop that says anybody who comes after these peaceful protesters, we will punish you to the fullest extent of the law? Do you see what's missing? So we look at who trains all these agencies. So there's a military, ex-military CIA guy in the United States. I follow him sometimes. He goes, you got to get out of these, you got to get out of Canada, you got to get out of California. Well, where are we all going to come live, buddy? In your backyard? But he's ex-military. Run away, run away, run away, get out. But nobody ever says, stop fucking the people. Because he's trained by the same 3-letter agencies that are trained in the secret societies at the universities, who design the system for abusers to get away with it. But they still need all the minions fighting amongst themselves and not finding their way, fighting out of the wet paper bag. Then you got mental health that talks about boundaries. No, he says, oh, tell people no, walk away, but never doesn't say, ask, do you have the right to take what you're taking? And I had somebody challenge me once and goes, Sandy, the narcissists don't like that. They won't listen. Punch them out. They will listen. Like, why do we have a different standard for physical violence? What about emotional, mental, spiritual, psychological environment, sexual abuse? The only one we hold account is be tolerant, don't get physical, because they know that's what they're afraid of. I can't remember if it was Silence of the Lambs or if it was a Clint Eastwood movie in the 70s, and there's this psycho running around, right? And they caught him and he starts going like this, don't hurt me, don't hurt me, don't hurt me. Because I think they know they get off on the emotional pain and suffering of others, but they can't handle it themselves. They get off on maybe pulling the wings off of flies, I don't know, but they get off on the pain and suffering, and that's how they get their emotional charge, inflicting pain, where most people get off on feeling love. And I was thinking last week, I was watching a Kevin Spacey movie, Pay It Forward. Hang on, this is good. Observe. I love your reaction, Brenda. This is fantastic. Observe. Okay, I'm going to explain it. So I'm watching Pay It Forward. And as I'm watching the TV.
Message. Just
okay. So I want to talk about Kevin Spacey. Okay, so we get, I watched the movie, but I did it with almost like 1 foot on the gas and 1 foot on the brakes to make sure nothing was coming off the screen at me. Anyways, and I looked at him and he had burn marks on his face. And at one point there was a scene, he was getting intimate with Helen Hunt and he opened his shirt and he had burn marks all over his shirt. And I'm thinking, you freaking little weasel. So he pretends he's all hurt. So we all feel sorry for him. Why did we all fall in love with Kevin Spacey as an actor? He always plays the underdog. There's another movie of him where he's got a, what do you call it? A disabled, he's been disabled like maybe from birth. And he's got his arm and it's disabled, and it's about taking money and what do you call, like fraud, being able to embezzle money. And he ended up getting away with, I don't know, I'm making up the number, say $20 million. And as he's leaving the building and he's walking down the street, he starts straightening up and undoing buckles and pulls off the prosthetic arm and puts it in the garbage can. And by the time he's like 2 blocks away, he's walking, he's faking illness. What made us like Kevin Spacey? Because he played the underdog. Look at all the people, the old farts who get caught with child sex abuse or pornography images. Oh, they're too frail to go to jail. So when we're watching all of these things that are going on, the anger around us, we can still see the manipulations that are being played out and how they play their little games. Everybody's the victim. So go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think that's why Kevin Spacey does that, so that the general populace feels for him, loves him, absolutely adores him. And when all that shit comes out about what he's really like, nobody believes it. Like Bill Cosby. Yes. Nobody would.
Because he was the best dad.
Childhood. I can't look back on picture pages and not feel sick to my stomach. Bill Cosby, all people. So I do want to interact just for 1 second now, because you said something about Daniel Bulford. And I do want to mention about that, because I know a lot of people were like, why is he saying that and whatever. Okay, so I think he was warning people, because there was also circulating rumors that the guards and the cops that were dressed up like cops, or the people that were dressed up like cops, and including the child or the the trampling horses, by the way, the ones who trampled people, were not actually police officers or RCMP officers from here. They were actually UN people dressed up like that they were infiltrating so that they could start cause a disturbance and show that on the news as the people getting all violent when, you know, they're just retaliating or they're just defending themselves even. So him telling them to back up, what I got instantly when I read that, or when I came across that, was he was basically showing or letting people know that, you know, you're going to get provoked. Don't fall for it. Don't fucking fall for it. Don't give in to them, and don't let them prove that what they're trying to show is real, right? That you are all violent protesters, you're all domestic terrorists and all this other shit. So I have to give him credit in that way, because I know a lot of people were up in arms about what he said, for lack of a better term, but I want to say that I think that there was definitely insight there, that because this guy stood beside Trudeau for and other politicians for a long time, protecting them and knowing what kinds of shit they pull. And that, you know, people said BLM had been hired, you know, Antifa was hired to go into some of these places and some of these the convoy places, blockades, whatever else, and start shit and make it look bad for us. And if we don't give in and we don't give, you know, we don't participate, then you can't make, you know what I mean? You can't make me look bad if I'm not willing to let you, right? So I wanted to say that about him.
So this is okay. It's okay. We see it from different perspectives. It's totally okay. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying. He didn't come out and say the police have been infiltrated, they're going to try to hurt you. And if we cannot simultaneously set a boundary for ourselves and care about others at the same time, so he should have come out. If we're going to change this energy, oh, don't let them provoke you. Then what the fuck are we standing up for? If we can't stand there without the police or them bringing in people to provoke and start a fight, what are we standing up for? So we have to decide. And it's not about getting into a fight with the police, but it is definitely about the message he sends is wrong. Nobody ever out there sends, stop fucking people, stop being the abuser. And this is the psyche of a society that is traumatized, and like abuse runs our industries, our governments. And that is not going to change until we start looking at what behaviors are abusive, who's perpetrating them, because nobody's going after, look at Slawley, the chief of police, right? They've got him on lies, manipulation, sexual assaults within his unit, like within the Ottawa Police Services. Anybody investigate? No, they investigate themselves. So what do? They rotate him out for bad behavior on dealing with the convoy, and they put another one in who orders all of these other cops in, but they never investigate the outgoing one. And if we are going to make changes in our society, we got to call all this shit out, which means you stop abusing people. So what are we going to say to the children? So use that example again, children, oh, just back away from these abusers when they're coming after you. We got to change how we see things, like with our own psyche and what we tolerate. Appreciate what you're saying. You know, in the moment, could be lots of truths to what you're saying for what he needed to do. But at the same time, if we don't start looking at this on a bigger scale, we're just going to keep doing the same old shit. But all of these organizations are trained by the 3-letter agencies and then the secret societies at these universities. That's why they have all these alma mater, is that what you call them? Like all the sorority houses, so they can all get together and they all think the same way. And that's where they form their bonds. So when they go out in the workforce, they all know each other. They know what they're capable of. So if we're going to make big changes in our society, we have to look at exactly under the hood and say, why is this happening? You see Stu Peters, I don't know if it was this week or last week. He was talking about Trudeau and a few different things. A few things had come up, and he was talking about pedophilia and Trudeau, and a lot of good things came out. I'm just going to leave it at that. iHeartRadio canceled his show. iHeartRadio is connected to Bell Canada, Bell Let's Talk. They say iHeartRadio has pedophile swirls in its logo. So I got to go look all this up. So Stu Peters is talking about pedophilia, ending it where it is in government. It's like, this is just a big conversation. iHeart cancels him. So we have to understand how big this problem is and not justify, don't get into a fight. So I'm not saying they've got more, look at the weapons they're using on us, direct energy weapons. They had people standing in front of this square. I don't know how big it was, if it was like 2 feet by 2 feet. They figured that's what was pulsing weapons or frequencies into the people. That's criminal. Should they be held accountable? Yeah, but you don't know who they are because they cover up their uniform, their badge numbers, their names. Since when did you have the right to start hurting your own people? What's the psyche of the people who work in these industries? Who gets to test them? Where's their procedures manuals that we can start looking and say, how did you draw that conclusion? So you want to tell us that you're qualified to talk about counseling, but you're not qualified to understand that pedophiles and psychopaths run your industry and create your curriculum manuals? Let's look at your manuals and let's just see what you're learning. Who says these people are more qualified to be you or me than you or me or anybody else for that matter? So you really need to look at how we're handling this. So anger is going to come up as all this stuff starts to unravel. And it's a good thing. How are we going to handle it, right?
Yeah. And I get what you're saying too about the whole, retaliating. I don't think I would certainly encourage a child who is being attacked by somebody to try and fight back in terms, in relation to, a protester who, agitated or provoked or whatnot like that. I think they're totally different things. So I would certainly say that, yeah, we should maybe have stood up and maybe,
I'm not saying that. I'm just questioning. I'm not saying that. I'm questioning that it's always about stand up for yourself, defend yourself, but it's never about stop taking what's not yours. That's the message I want to put. And it's going to take a bit of time for us to understand these are the messages we're getting. Look at it and see how pervasive it is. What are we going to do to change it? And when we look at the rally, the trucker rally in Ottawa, they broke it up. Okay. But now we've got them going on in the States and all around the world. So there is still momentum. It's not one person or one group has to do everything every time. You rotate it out and then let the next one carry the ball. So a lot of good things are still happening about this. It's not that it's over and done with, in my opinion.
Yeah. And, I think that if we had really maybe done a little more strategic outlook even, because I came across something this morning that I found very fascinating. And I wondered how long it had been circulating and if anybody had known this, but, for instance, the streets in Ottawa, certain streets are federal, certain streets are provincial. And if they had stayed off the federal territory and just moved on to the other street, they could have stayed provincially, but they didn't. They stayed on the federal, and so they left. Now, I get that. And what I think in a sense, going to Toronto and dispersing from Ottawa, I don't necessarily know that was defeated in any way. I think personally that actually, I think it was supposed to go that way because it drew attention. It drew attention to the right places and it broke up the energy that needed to be broken up.
Ottawa was an amazing experience being down there, and just the people, people would look at you and you make eye contact as you're walking past somebody and their face would light up in a smile. Like people, and it was genuine. It was absolutely phenomenal energy. I see one homeless man on the street. You can tell by the clothes he's wearing and stained clothes, and he had cuts on his face. There's a guy sitting beside him with his arm around him, talking to him, sitting on the pavement. Like there was some really neat energies in there. So why can't people protest in their own capital? That's our building. That's not the politicians' building. There's a sense of entitlement that goes, and that can be drawn to anger. If you think you're entitled to what's mine, you're not. That could also bring in righteous anger, that somebody actually thinks they can take what's not theirs. And we're seeing that happening in so many institutions, so many areas in government. So I figured that's why the Ambassador Bridge was opened up, because human trafficking coming over the bridge along the 400 series highway.
I said was, that very thing, like they're gonna open that bridge and all the others that they can, because those are choking out their trafficking spots.
Yes.
They're not gonna have that.
No. So we need to see who owns the bridges and all kinds of things, right? So there's a lot of good things that are coming out. And when people start to see, somebody was telling me on Facebook what he's gone through, speaking up about something and getting ruined for it by the system because he'd gone to the police with some evidence. Everybody kind of says the same story. You go to the police with your evidence and you end up being the criminal, right? Because they all run, not all of them, but the majority of them run like shotgun for the criminals in government. And for the ones who don't and don't understand this, I don't understand why we're paying them. If they don't understand who the real criminals are, why are we paying them? But I just found the whole thing very interesting, watching how this all unfolded. So is this going to be the collapse of the system because now nobody trusts the police? Or I shouldn't say nobody. Some people do, but some people have good reason not to. I'm dumbfounded by the number of people who've come out and told me about the abuses that are going on in the system, how CAS has stolen the children, how there's no recourse. And who was I watching? Michael Jacobs with some guy, Tim Hoyt, I think is his name. I could have his name wrong. And he said that the police, Children's Aid Society doesn't answer to anybody. The police can't even touch them, but they're taxpayer funded. And this is in the United States. So lots of things that we have to look at that maybe will make us angry. But the idea is, can we look at it objectively, go, okay, I'm angry. Maybe I need to go cool my jets for a little while. Maybe I need to go, like, grounding techniques, go out and be in nature for a little while, or do yoga, dance, swimming, depending on where you're going, things along that line. But find a way to diffuse your own anger and just analyze it. Is this mine? Why am I angry? Is it righteous anger? Because I really think those direct energy weapons, when 3 people got angry out of it, what came first? Was anger the response from being zapped, or was it a frequency that was put into them to cause agitation?
I think we'll know, I think we'll start to see what you're talking about more and more. So what you're referring to is the energetic direct weapon, or the direct energy weapon shot huge magnetic resonance at these people, frequencies, and they were in turn affected by it. Now, the average person on, anywhere is going to feel headaches and common flu-like symptoms. Go figure. And those kinds of things. That's electromagnetic frequency and radiation illness, right?
Yeah.
But those who are jabbed, we'll say, are going to feel it 10 times worse. And what's going to happen is, between them, anytime they're in the vicinity of another, it's going to bounce off of them, through them, and out again, right? It's going to come in and go out again, and it's going to be twice the magnification. And what we're going to notice is that everybody who's in that space is going to be their own transmitter.
Yes.
They don't need as many towers. They've made people transmitters. Yeah. So the compilation and the compounding of these energies is going to hit the people who aren't even in that space, like jabbed, because it's going to be so much coming off of them. It's like you're not going to be able to get away from it. We have to really start keeping boundaries, and that means 6 feet.
And I wore my air purifier when I was down there, so it gives off negative ions 3 feet out. So when you think of all the positive ions coming off if it's graphene oxide or what have you, what particular metal, so it pushes things out. Because I had said beforehand I wasn't going to let anybody hug me, and people just hugged you. It's just what happened down there. So, but I felt safe with that, having that on. So what I was going to say, when you're talking about people being lit up, the one person I spoke to, he had said a week before the other 2 that he thought he was poisoned down there. So they all said they thought they were poisoned. So it hadn't even come out that it was direct energy weapons, but he was mad. So anger hit him, even though they hadn't even brought up the possibility of the direct energy weapon. So I'm just watching the emotion just observe what's going on. So how are we being targeted energetically? And all 3 of those people were not jabbed.
And so their level of emotion determined how they felt eventually and where they were. Because if they weren't at a high enough resonance to hold themselves above, they would have been pulled down into grief, anger,
all those things, right? So this is interesting that you say that, because you know what my suggestions were? Go get 528 frequency, because it's about the love vibration, and binaural beats, whatever, and a DNA repair. Some of the binaural beats will have both. And I said, ditch your anger, because it's just causing you to agitate. One said he could taste burnt taste in his mouth every time, like it tastes burned. So did they fry his insides? We don't know, right? But it was interesting because I said, you got to get rid of your anger, because that's just going to make you feel worse. And until you get rid of your anger, you're not going to get better. And I said, come back in 2 weeks and be pissed off if you want, but get healthy first, then come back and visit the anger, and then don't let it own you, because we can change our states of consciousness if we choose to. And I don't believe in all this love and the light stuff, that it's all light and fluffy. We got to feel the anger, like you're saying, feel the anger, because you might need to set a boundary, but don't stay in it. Feel it for what it needs to tell you, and then move on. We have the ability to do that, but we're not taught. And what I found, the more we process our emotions, maybe you've experienced this too, the more we process our emotions, the faster we can do it. I remember one time feeling sadness, incredible sadness. And I go for a walk and I'm crying and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I realized that was the first time I could feel sadness without having a cloak of fear over my shoulder. Does that make, so it's about feeling the feeling. And then I'm crying and then I'm laughing because I'm realizing I can feel sadness just for sadness sake. And I'm laughing and I'm like, people are going to think I'm nuts. I had my sunglasses on so nobody could see I'm crying as I'm walking, right? But it was like, you know, you just go through, I just processed that in like 10 minutes in nature. How long have I been carrying that around? Who knows, right? But it was just an interesting thing to observe yourself in your emotional states.
We are humans being. We have to be the emotion as it's flowing through us. That energy and motion is it. And that's what we come here for. We come
Yeah.
here for that range of,
In
that
our physical body, yes, the emotions in our physical body, right? So that's a really good point with flowing your energy, because if you end up holding in an anger, you can create a block in there. If you don't know how to clear it, it can manifest into a physical long-term issue for you. So this is why you want to go through them all, right? So, and don't get me wrong, I'm in a great mood today. Been in a pretty good mood this week. Doesn't mean tomorrow's going to be the same. Doesn't matter. Deal with it when you come into it. But why am I angry? Is this mine or somebody else's? You can do the same with fear. You can do the same with anxiety. I've gone for walks feeling overly anxious. An hour later, and I don't power walk. I just happen to walk fast. It's just what I do. An hour later, I'm still anxious. I'm like, what is going on, Sandy? So I asked myself, is this mine? 2/3 of it wasn't even mine. It was the collective anxiety. Get rid of that, you know? So our emotions are the key.
want to feel, right? Is it yours? And there's so much going on that you could very easily tap into. And you could be just a little bit pissed off, but you tap into the collective pissed off and you're a whole lot pissed off. Because you got it's very important that we note that, it's imperative. The other thing too is being in the flow. People talk about going with the flow and they think it has to do with going and doing what everybody else is doing. It has nothing to do with that at all. As far as I'm concerned, it has to do with going with the flow of what's going and flowing through you. If you feel angry in the moment, then feel it, be it, know it, and express it. Use your words though, like don't lash out, but process it. If you feel happy, then do that too. But ultimately it's about what's flowing through you and whether or not you're willing to engage with the life as it's flowing through you, right?
Yes. And that's when we're going with these energies coming on planet. We have the radiation we're dealing with, the direct energy weapons. We have the flu-like symptoms that we're dealing with. We have the higher energies coming in that are making us flow faster. How do we know what these energy, what's happening, what's hitting us at the time? There's so much going on. It's like a kaleidoscope, and how do you stay centered in it as it all unfolds around you and information comes in? And sometimes people attack you and say things and it's like, okay, this is out of sorts. I'll let it go once. I'm not letting it go twice. You know what I mean? It's not like this person. I understand the pattern that's coming up, but I hope by understanding and observing these patterns, we can give people a heads up. This is going to get real, folks. It's going to get real fast and real hard, right?
There's in the next few months, there's an enormous amount of shock and awe coming.
Yeah.
And it's absolute and bewilderment, just absolute bewilderment. Like, how did we let this happen? How did we not see this going on? All of these things are, this astonishment is coming. People just still I'm very impressed with the amount of people that are waking up, even if it's just about the basics, right? Even if it's just about the third dimensional experience where we are right now in this tiny little bit. But ultimately, I really want people to wake up to all of it, obviously. But in the meantime, layers is okay, but we have to watch those layers too, because they're all revealing.
It's like layers or ranges. And that's one thing that people say to me that I'm not sure that I'm on board with is, how did we let this happen? No, we hired you to do a job. You were sneaky, you were manipulative, you were underhanded, you were criminal, and you took advantage. You own that shit. Because the example I'm going to use is my car. I don't know how cars work, but I have a car. I have to trust the car manufacturer is going to do the right thing. And I have to trust whoever I'm going to take with me to look at a car knows what they're doing, because I don't want to know. So sometimes we have to trust other people that they're going to do their best, put their best self forward. And they're going to be people of integrity, but that's not, doesn't seem to be who's in charge. They own this shit. If they're the ones stealing things, money, they're the ones conning people out by throwing tenders to a certain person's way and not allowing the general public in on it. They're responsible for their criminal behavior. I'm not their freaking babysitter. And we got to change this to you are responsible. And then I think that is going to help balance the energy of give and take. We let this happen. No, you're really sneaky and you're manipulative and you use every lever possible to fool the masses. Yes, we own this. This did happen. We own this, but you are responsible for the past, you're responsible for the present, and you're definitely responsible in the future. Even if that means we have to come up with some sort of a blockchain for government dollars that they have to show where every dollar is spent, that they can't hide anymore because we can't trust them to do the right thing. Do you need us to babysit you people, government people? And this is basically what it's come down to. So I see holding accountable, but not, I don't get to judge. Like I can judge behavior if that's what I choose in various situations, but people need to start taking responsibility. You've been given a responsibility. You take it to the highest extent of the best you can possibly be with it. Or don't sign up to be a politician. Don't sign up to be the head of an institution. Don't sign up to be the head of an learning institution if you want people stupid, if that's your goal. Get the fuck out. So that's my new saying. Get up, right? So I'm just trying to change our energy as we're growing, because as we're creating the new, we have to let the old paradigms go of how much shit we took. Oh yeah. So I'm just putting it out there for fun. It's okay. It's okay to, because sometimes we'll go through both. As we're transitioning, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be a bit of this, right? It's like the stock market. How much risk are you willing to take? Well, we got to have changes. So we're going to go have ups and downs as we go through this bumpy ride. So I hope this helps people look at anger with fresh eyes, not hate it, not be ashamed of it. I was talking to somebody this week who was really upset about how people are treating her. And she was like, just keep treating me like this. I just say, leave me alone. And I looked at her and I said, have you ruled out the possibility you're surrounded by assholes? Like, why is this your problem? And she started laughing because nobody's told her that before. We're surrounded by assholes in so many ways in life. Maybe it's time they started owning their choices and stop pretending that they're smarter than you or they know more than you. You can make decisions that are right for you. I'll make them that are right for me. And I hope other people trust themselves to make the right ones for them, right? Lots of,
God bless the assholes, because without them, you wouldn't be able to deal with shit.
you and I are not on the same page. Some of that is, to me, is just the old new age stuff. God bless the assholes. No, own your shit. Stop hurting people. We need a society that needs to grow up.
Accountable. I'm just saying that, when it comes down to it, if we didn't have assholes in our lives, we wouldn't have any way to really deal with the shit. Like, they're the ones that give us the shit to deal with. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any problems. If you're not an asshole in my life, then I don't have your asshole issues to deal with. You know what I mean?
Then
like
we should not want change because they're all teaching us lessons. So let's leave things exactly the way they are. So it's got to, so if we are going to accept the assholes and say, you're making it the way it is, well, then why do we want change if they're making us who we are? This is all the old school thinking that, oh, thank God we have assholes or we would never learn. Well, then why are we going into the golden era? Are we going to bring the assholes with us? No.
It's kind of like exposing them for who they are, which is what's happening, right? Like, and to me, that's, again, righteous anger. Jesus ripped up the temple. Why? Because he exposed the corruption and the evil doings that were happening right there in the house of God. Wow.
And they nailed his ass to a cross. Like, we gotta find better ways to handle this.
The point. It's no different then than it is now. They always kill the people that are speaking what they don't want them to say, right? I mean, like, that's just.
But are we the change? Are we in for a change? And if we are, what are we going to accept going forward? It's kind of what I'm trying to say, right?
And so I believe that if we are all in a place of understanding who we really are and what we're really all about, then self-governance becomes a thing, and you don't have people treating each other poorly. You don't have people overstepping boundaries or overreaching from government spaces or any of that stuff, because everybody honors who they are and what they're doing here. And there's no need for a law to say don't kill people, because you wouldn't even fucking think that.
Right. And that's where I'm hoping we go. I love that self-governance. I'm going to use that as a hashtag on our video.
Well, otherwise you're dealing with government that is trying to, govern your mind.
Yeah.
Not into that. Self-governance.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So I'm hoping that this has helped everybody look at anger with fresh eyes and understand it's just a normal emotion that we go through. And there's times it's reasonable to experience anger and feel anger. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Doesn't give you the right to go and hurt others, but just be responsible. Like you said, the self-governance. So I'm going to put our contact information underneath the in the description box, but we've been here about almost an hour. So maybe it's time to say goodbye to everybody. Have a great weekend. We're almost on the end of February. We're in the glide path for the spring. And Greta Thunberg, it's been minus something out here. I don't know for how many days. There's no global warming, not in Canada. And share that. So till next time, everybody. See ya.